Right, everyone, how we doing? Just going to take a few minutes today and talk to you about weight cutting. Obviously, if you watch the UFC, MMA, or combat sports in general, you hear a lot about weight cutting. So I'm going to go through the process of how you do that, why I decided to drop down from light heavyweight to middleweight, 185, the pros and cons of weight cutting, and then ultimately why I think we should try and do away with weight cutting. I think it's kind of harmful to the sport. So anyway, before I get into all of that, do me a favor, click the subscribe button down below so you get notified next time. But thank you very much. The channel is growing quickly. And as I say, thank you to everyone that subscribed, liked the videos, left comments, all that good stuff. Now, anyone that knows my career knows I started as a light heavyweight, 205 pounds. In the UK, we don't really have the culture of cutting weight, kind of like out here in the States, in America, and some of the other countries around the world. That's because the wrestling culture isn't really... it's not ingrained into our culture like it is out here in America. We don't wrestle in high school and college and things like that. Out here in the States, they do. And because of that, weight cutting is something that a lot of fighters, obviously wrestling is one of the key backgrounds that you need to have to get into mixed martial arts. So a lot of those wrestlers were coming into MMA, and then they would bring that culture of cutting weight with them. I remember when I was fighting in the UK back in the early days, as I say, as a light heavyweight, a lot of people were like, oh, eventually you're going to have to go down to 185. You're too small for a light heavyweight. Those guys are walking around at 230, 240 pounds. You're walking around at 205, 210 on your best day. And I was like, what are you talking about? No, I'm good. Trust me, I don't need to cut weight. And in the early days, I was undersized because a lot of the light heavyweights, a lot of the big guys, they are walking around 225, 230, even as high as 240 sometimes. And I remember, I'll tell you a little story. I remember when I was fighting UFC 70, Elvis Sinasek, it was my debut for the UFC in the UK. I decided to get everybody tickets and all my friends and family and stuff. And that was the last time I ever decided to do that because it was so bloody stressful. And I remember one day, it was 2 days before the fight, I think, and I was on the floor in my hotel room. I had tickets everywhere. I had cash from everyone because I got to take the cash off everybody. I've then got to give that to the UFC. I've got to get the tickets. I've got to make sure the tickets are given to all the people. It was such a pain in the ass. Anyway, after I'd done that for the day, I decided to sleep at home because, you like to sleep in your own bed. So I was driving home and I had a stressful day and I realized I hadn't eaten anything. And I was driving along the M6, the motorway in England, and I saw the Charlton Richard services. I saw the sign for Burger King. And because I was so stressed out, I forgot that I had a fight and I had a weigh-in the next morning. Anyway, I pulled over from the motorway, went to the Burger King, and I got a triple Whopper with cheese and bacon, a large fries, and a massive Diet Coke. And anyway, I destroyed the thing. I devoured it in record time. And I'm drinking the drink, and just right at the end when it makes that noise, like, when you finish the drink, I just went, oh my God, what am I doing? I'm weighing in the morning. Anyway, the next day comes, and I just stepped on the scale. No problem. Still 205 pounds. So I was definitely undersized because I should have been doing that. And then when I had my first loss in the UFC against Rashad Evans, very, very close fight. Afterwards, I had to look at myself and think, what am I doing wrong in my preparation that I need to eradicate? Obviously, I don't want to rack up all the losses. I don't want to start making a habit of losing fights, so you got to be honest with yourself. And one of the things that I noticed was on the day of the weigh-in, Rashad Evans was in the sauna, killing himself with his team, stripping down, cutting 15, 20, 10, I don't know how many pounds, but he was going through that whole process. On the flip side, I was sat in a Chinese restaurant eating noodles and drinking 7-Up. So that said to me, okay, I'm clearly not making the sacrifices I could be to be as good as I can, so maybe I got to drop down to 185. So when I dropped down initially, I didn't really know what I was doing. So I dieted all the way down to 185 like an absolute idiot. I could have cut weight to 170. I could have been a welterweight. I remember UFC 83, it's when Matt Serra knocked out George... No, it was when George St. Pierre got revenge on Matt Serra, and I made my middleweight debut against Charles McCarthy. Charles McCarthy, first round TKO. But I remember I went down to check my weight about 8 o'clock in the morning, and I saw Eddie Bravo in the lift. And Eddie Bravo says, hey, Mike, how's it going? How's the weight? And I said, yeah. I said, I think I'm like just over, I think I'm like 188, something like that. And he was like, man, you could walk, so you could weigh in at 170 if you cut weight. And he was right. I was doing it all wrong. Fortunately, over the next few fights in a few years, I figured out a system. So this is basically what you do when you're trying to cut weight. And there's many different ways of doing it, but this is generally the approach that a lot of people use, certainly the approach that I use, and I kind of mastered it towards the end of my career, and I got it down pretty well. But obviously, I would generally start camps for 185 because I was getting a little bit older and a little bit fatter, say 215, something like that. So I would diet down. You know, one time I had to diet down from 233. When I coached the Ultimate Fighter against Jason Miller, I got up to 233 pounds. It wasn't pretty. Certainly didn't look good with my shirt off, but whatever, that's another story. Anyway, so you start your camp heavy, like 220, and I wanted to diet down to 200 pounds. If I left, generally you had to, if you were fighting in the same country, you have to get to the UFC on the Tuesday before the Saturday of your fight. And if I could get on the plane at 200 pounds, I'd be a happy man. Now, of course, to do that, to lose that weight, you know, you got to do a lot of cardio. You got to do a lot of training. You got to burn more calories than what you're taking in. And that affects your recovery, right? You're not taking on the carbohydrates that you need. The carbohydrates are super important for recovery in your training process. So you start on your Monday and you're pushing yourself to the limit. You're training as hard as you can, but you're not taking on the nutrients that you need to recover. And certainly carbohydrates is one of the main nutrients that you need to recover and not be sore. Now, of course, you do lose weight by doing that. You do lose weight, but you also lose muscle. And I remember at the start of my training camps, I would feel strong and explosive. My cardio wasn't as good as what it needed to be, but I still felt strong and explosive. And I would throw around a lot of my training partners. But by the end of my training camp, I was weak. I'd lost that explosion. I'd lost that power. And a lot of the same guys, while I was in great shape and I had better cardio, they were kind of throwing me around the room a little bit because I'd gone weak. Now, of course, as you get lighter, you do lose a little bit of strength. It doesn't have to be that way, but that's generally what happens. But still, as I say, the same guys that I would be dominating at the start of the camp were kind of having their way with me because I got so weak because I wasn't taking on the nutrients that I needed to. Anyway, hopefully I got on the plane at 200 pounds. And then I'd fly to whatever city it was. Now, on the Monday of the fight week, I'd start drinking 2 gallons of distilled water a day. Okay, so 2 gallons of distilled water a day. It's a miserable process. You could have a big gallon jug with you everywhere you go, and you're just trying to drink water all day long, right? And then when you go to bed, you're peeing all night. You're up all night. You're up every 30 minutes or so, taking a leak. And the reason you want to do that is because what you're doing is you're flushing out your body. Okay, for every gram of carbohydrate that you that you eat, that you ingest, your body temporarily holds on to 4 grams of water. So what you want to do is you want to flush out all the carbohydrates, you want to flush out all the toxins in your body, and certainly you want to flush out all the sodium. Because a lot of your water, so a lot of your weight is made up by water, well, most of it is. And that's why a lot of these diets, when you go on the Atkins diet or you start a keto diet or whatever, and you stick to it, you drop weight very, very quickly. That's because you're dropping excess sodium, you're dropping all the carbohydrates, you're dropping all the excess fluids that your body temporarily is holding on to. Of course, if you don't do this process, then it holds on to that weight all the time. That's why I'm saying these diets, they'll say, oh, guaranteed to lose X amount of pounds in your first week. And you will be. You pretty much are guaranteed to lose that weight if you stick to the diet in the first week, maybe the first 2 weeks. But then you will plateau because that water weight is gone. Okay, so anyway, what we would do is we'd flush out the body. We'd drink 2 gallons of water a day if possible. Sometimes we didn't do that. Our coaches would always say, Mike, come on, drink the water. Because you're up all night peeing, and sometimes you just get so full and it just feels gross. On top of that, we would reduce all carbohydrates. Well, when I say all, pretty much all. I'd allow a little bit in, but generally do away with all carbohydrates. And then we would do away with any kind of sodium. You know, make sure we had no salt in our body. So, and that was very challenging as well, because a lot of the time you'd fly to a city, to wherever the fight was, and then we'd be at the mercy of the restaurants. And I remember going into the restaurants and we'd always be like to the chef, to the waiter, say, hey, make sure no salt on that. But then they don't tell that to the chef, and then it comes out and there's salt on it. So by the end, I'm like, hey, no salt. I'm allergic to salt. Please make sure you tell the chef no salt because I'm allergic and I'll have a bad reaction. And they would look at me as if to say, who the fuck is this guy? He's full of shit. No one's allergic to salt. But anyway, that's what we try and do. And what you do is every day you get out of bed, as I say, you get there at 200 pounds. You do that for a day. The next morning, you might get out at 198. On Wednesday morning, you might be 197, even lighter. And then on the Thursday, you're probably 196. And you haven't done anything. You've restricted your carbohydrates. You've drank a lot of water. You've flushed out your system. and you're back down to 196. And then 24 hours before the weigh-in, we stop drinking anything. Okay, we stop drinking anything. You stop eating anything, of course. If you get really hungry, you do allow yourself some low carbohydrate snacks, but generally you don't want to do that. And then you wait till late before you go to bed, and then the weight cut really starts. So if I was 186, it was a championship fight, I've got to lose 11 pounds. So what I would do is we would heat up the room as hot as possible. And we turn, obviously, the heating in the room up, but we'd also ask the hotel for space heaters. Get as many space heaters as we could. We'd crank up the heat in there. And we'd essentially turn the room into almost a sauna. It would get very, very hot. Then I would run a bath, as hot as I could possibly take it. I'd run a bath, then I get 10 litres of salt. Put the 10 litres of salt in the bath. Then I will cover myself in a product called Sweet Sweat. Sweet Sweat is what everybody uses now, but I used to use one called Abilene. It's basically like a makeup remover. It just closes the pores on your skin and makes you sweat more. So you cover yourself in that. You'd have your hot bath ran with 10 litres of salt in it. Then you jump in the bath for 20 minutes. 20 minutes doesn't sound very long, but with the salt, with the osmosis from the salt, that sucks fluid out of your body, and it's very hot, and the room is boiling hot, and you've got on the Sweet Sweat, so you're sweating more. After 20 minutes, you are miserable, and you can't wait to get out of that bath. So you get out of the bath, then you put on your plastics, you put on your sweatsuit, then you get in the bed. Once you're in the bed, then my teammates will get towel after towel after towel. We would ask the hotel room for like 100 towels, and they always did it for us, which was very nice. And then my teammates would cover me in layers. As you know, the more layers, the hotter it is. So they would cover me. Towels would be piled up this high, and I would lie there for 20 minutes. Again, doesn't sound very hard, but when you're already that hot from the bath, you've got more Sweet Sweat on, you've got the plastics on, you've got the towels on you, you're sweating like crazy. So you do 20 minutes, then you rip all the towels off, then you do the process again. You get back in the bath, you do another 20 minutes, you get out, and you get under the towels, and you have another 20 minutes there. And then hopefully when we've done that, sometimes that would do 6 pounds, something like that. Maybe sometimes 7 if you were lucky. So you get on the scale, you check your weight, and you say, great, I'm halfway there. But at this point, you're really struggling. You know, you've just pushed or forced, 7 pounds out of your body. You go to sleep that night. The reason you would do it as late as possible is because obviously you want to be in that dehydrated state for as short a time as possible. So we would leave it as late as possible. And then let's say towards the end, they were doing the weigh-ins in the morning. If the weigh-in was at 9 o'clock, then we'd set our alarm, say, for 6 a.m. to get the rest of the water out. So we go to bed that night. It's a shit night's sleep. You do not sleep well. You're so thirsty, you're so dry. I would get ice cubes. I just suck on an ice cube here and there to quench my thirst. I remember sometimes waking up in the middle of the night and I was just so thirsty, and then it dawned on me, hold on, I've got a mini bar. And I remember opening up the mini bar and it was like the holy grail. You'd look there was Sprites and there was Cokes and there was orange juice. I remember one night I opened up a can of Sprite and I'm downing it in the middle of the night, and my teammate's like, Mike, what the hell are you doing? You can't have that. And he'd snatch it out of my hand. I'm like, oh God, but it just tasted so good. Anyway, the next morning you get up, you repeat the process again. You run the bath, you get in the towels, you get in the bath, you get in the towels. But of course now your body's hanging on to the water, right? So it doesn't let go of it quite as well. So you get on the scale and you're like, crap, after doing all this, I'm still 3 pounds over. So now the hard part, now those last 3 pounds, they're a real bitch to get out of your system. So you put the plastics on, you go for a run. You try and do that, maybe you get a pound. Then you get in the sauna, in and out, in and out. By this point, you feel like you're going to die, right? It's really, really not good. You keep up this process, you keep pushing on, your teammates are there, they're giving you support, and then eventually you make weight. And you walk out there, you step on the scale, and I remember many times, man, I would be so lightheaded. I'd feel like I was going to faint. So, and sometimes I'd have to grab the railings. People would grab hold of me. And I would my heart is going 1,000,000 miles an hour. And I literally felt like I was going to faint, pass out, maybe even die or worse. Well, not worse. Can't get much worse than that, can you? But still, I felt that I was going to pass out or even die. It was bad, trust me. And then as soon as you weigh in, you start the rehydration process. You take on, in the old days, you used to be able to have an IV. That was great, but they did away with that when USADA came on board. So we drink a lot of Pedialyte, get a lot of electrolytes in us, and then slowly start nourishing the body, giving them slowly, little meals regularly and often, getting the carbohydrates in there, getting the salts in there, getting the electrolytes in there. And then hopefully the next morning you wake up, you feel good. Now, that's a hellish process. And it's so stupid because you train for 8 weeks for a fight. You treat your body like it's a temple. You follow a strict diet. You don't drink any alcohol. You work out 2 or 3 times a day. You push yourself to the absolute limit. And then you almost kill yourself the night before the fight. And it just doesn't make any sense, right? I think everybody should just move up a weight class. Listen, there are pros and cons to cutting weight. The pros are, obviously, if you can cut weight, then you're getting this perceived advantage that you're going to be fighting smaller guys, right? You're a big guy. I'm walking around at 210, 220, whatever. I'm going to fight guys that are weighing 185, right? So you think that you're going to be stronger there. You're going to be fighting smaller guys. But the reality is, they're all doing it. You're fighting guys the same weight. They weigh the same as you. They're the same height as you. Excuse me. When I fought Jason Day, that was my second fight at middleweight at the O2 Arena. I met him in the UFC office. And I was like, what the hell? Who's this guy? I thought I'd be fighting smaller guys at 185. But no, as I say, they're doing the exact same process. So there is no advantage. You're both going through this situation. You're both pushing yourself to the limit. You're both almost killing yourself to get this advantage that doesn't exist. You know what I'm saying? And the cons are, well, listen, the cons are very, very drastic. Number one, it's extremely dangerous for your body. It's not good. It makes you miserable. You're focusing on that throughout the entire training camp, right? You have to get up every day, check your weight, alter your diet. You're not recovering. You're not getting the nourishment that you need. You're sore as hell because you're not taking on the carbohydrates. Makes you a miserable bastard as well, let me tell you that. And then also, your cardio suffers as you start getting later in the fight because you've just killed yourself the day before. For some reason, you start getting tired. You're like, why am I tired? It's because you went through this very, very stressful weight cut. And then on top of that, you can't take punches as well. I don't know the science behind that, and I don't know if that's a fact. But from my knowledge, you can't take a punch as well. And trust me, I've been there many times. You can't take a punch as well when you've been through a weight cut. And it makes sense. Look at what you're doing yourself. You're dehydrating yourself to the point of collapse or the point you're on the brink of death. Right, so you're not going to be able to take a shot the next day. So what happens? That means everybody's performance suffers. That means that everyone, if they didn't cut weight, they would be able to fight at a higher level. They would be able to have a better output. They would have a higher output, more style, more offensive moves. They could take a shot better. And just the fight's going to be better, as opposed to it starting well and then starting to get a little lackluster as the fight progresses. So, and then on top of all that, as I say, you're fighting guys the same weight. So if everybody just moved up a weight class, we could almost eradicate the need for cutting weight. The problem is, though, people will always try and get an advantage. People are always going to try and cut weight. People are always going to try and take steroids, whatever it is. Whenever there's money involved and there's fame involved and there's clout involved and there's medals, people want to win. Okay, so it's natural that people are going to try and cheat. But if everybody moved up a weight class, I think it'd be better for the sport. I think it'd be safer for the sport. Fortunately, deaths isn't something that's commonplace. We've never had one in the UFC, thank God. Touch wood, hopefully it stays that way. But as I say, if everybody moved up a weight class, but to do that, and I don't think this is going to happen, and I'm not lobbying for this to happen either, we would have to add more weight classes. Now, of course, that changes everything. You start adding more weight classes, things get complicated, records get affected. But I would like to see 25, 35, 45, 55, 65, 75, 85, 95, 205, and then a 215 cruiserweight. And then over that, you're in heavyweight. You're in with the big boys. Of course, that's a big ask. That is like a massive overhaul. So I'm not saying that that's what the UFC should do or mixed martial arts should do. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying from my perspective, I think that would be a logical choice. And you've still got 10 pounds between weight classes. I just feel like from 205 to 185, that's a massive jump. Most of the other weight classes, it's only 10 pounds. That's a big jump. From 70 to 85 is 15. From 85 to 205, that's 20. It's a massive jump. Should be 10 pounds, I think. But as I say, what do I know? But still, there you go. Just thought I'd share that with you. This is what fighters go through. When you hear about cutting weight, that is what they're doing. They are pushing themselves to the limit. They are breaking down their bodies and dehydrating themselves to almost exhaustion. And as I say, that can't be good for the athlete. It's not good for the sport. It's not conducive to having the best possible performance in your fight when you've almost killed yourself the night before. Anyway, there you go. Do me a favor. Hit the subscribe button. Have a good one. Take care.